I'm one of the few people who interacts with the LRF on several levels, so I get a little advantages when I ask my questions. And I want to make 2 comments and then ask 2 questions. One is to congratulate Wakonyo and her team and the board for the work you've done. And listening to the stories of Janet, Claire, and Kariuki, I keep asking the question I ask you, Wakonyo, until I irritate you: where are these documentation of these stories? We need to reduce them to writing. We need to reduce them to video clips. We need to reduce them to tapes for posterity, for us, and to be kind of patenting our work. I know that Nagola is in the house. In 2009, we went to a village in Kuria, a little village called Koimbotobo. I don't even think it's on the map. Komotobo, yes. And as we were talking to clergy, you know, clergy are all men, powerful men in a community. There was a group of women sitting aside working at an institution. And naturally, I got interested and I started talking to them. And they were talking about FGM and peace building and very, very articulate. And then I asked, and how did you learn about all this? They said, we are paralegals from Legal Resources Foundation, a place that's not even on the Kenyan map. So Wakonyo, that's a challenge for you and your team. We went to the Kuria East DC's office. His senior officers, the DO, the chiefs are all alumni of LRF. And that's something we must capture. And well done. I must say, we really must congratulate you. And this is no mean feat. Listening to David Wachira, as he talked, he lamented something about staff turnover. I know it's hurting when you train people, invest a lot of money in them, and then they go away. But perhaps, Wakonyo, you could borrow the kingdom principle of the vineyard, that this is LRF investing in this nation. And when you go to East African Human Rights Defender's Office, when you go to East African Court of Justice, when you go to Arusha East African Community and find LRF former staff there, I mean, for me, it's so gratifying to know that this is what you've done, and you've been able to replicate yourselves and the values of LRF into the nation, into the region, and into the wider continent. And now my question. When you talked about people participation, really, you just catch my heart, because that's the core of justice, having people participate in their lives, in their systems. And one thing you said is that prisoners have been able to vet the judges and magistrates. We now have a scorecard. It may be a little technical, but I'm hoping that as communities you'll be able to use this scorecard. But does LRF have a monitoring tool? If you say prisoners made 28 presentations, were these presentations taken on board? Was anything done about them? Were they trashed? If they were trashed, why were they? If this scorecard is going to be, and I can see you're consulting with your board member, and if this scorecard is going to be used, how are you going to monitor that it's actually being used and if it's making any impact? And then finally, Wakonyo, and I want you to listen to this, you and Wanjiku, because you take charge. Communities are your greatest assets. And we know your work is with communities. But again, we must remember that justice is blind. And together with positives of our community, we must also look at the ugly side. And we are getting concerned, especially those of us who are now senior citizens, about the proliferation of militia groups in this country. What engagement, if any, can LRF do with these groups, wherever they are, whoever they are? And I think that's it for me. But I'm not going to leave you without saying again that we must capture these stories. And you have amongst your friends talent that you can use now when it's still available. Thank you.
I think I've had this discussion with Jedida, is the basket funding from donors, that maybe one of the reasons people are not getting too much money is because the basket funds have money, but they're also giving to so many organizations. I don't know whether that is good or bad, so that people end up getting less than what they used to get before. I think one of the challenges probably for LRF, and this is just a suggestion, would be to graduate would be to graduate from, I don't know how to put this one without sounding so, you've been in operation since 93. There are some things you do very well, your core competence, the paralegal work, the support to communities and all that. But there's a time people grow up as in how you're growing up to Haki. That is growing up to Haki Institute, because then ni kama fundi, ule alikuwa tu fundi wa kushonea watu, then you graduate to distributing uzi ya kushona to smaller fundis. You see what I'm saying? Yeah, you started as a fundi yourself, small fundi, unashonea watu viraka hapa na pale, nguo moja mbili, then one day you start distributing zips, vifungo, materials, so that all small fundis are coming to you. And why I'm saying this is because your name is the Legal Resources Foundation. You could graduate to the center, to the central place for all people who do the kind of work you do come for resources. And I'm sure if you did that, you would be a service organization servicing smaller, younger entrants into that field with the, so they have the curriculum development, the materials, share what Njeri is saying here about documenting and people coming to you to get these nice stories, the stories for change. People who want to fund the work you do coming to you for direction, what has work been done. Actually, you become a real legal resource center where people come to get. And that one, you would not have too much competition because you're actually adding value to younger and to people like karaoke who are down there in the counties who will want to come to you once in a while to consult and get expertise that is not available. So you become the big sister or the big brother to the smaller people, to the younger, not smaller, really younger people who are coming into that, because the work is a lot. The work is truly a lot. But you need to go up there and start providing services to that industry in a way of probably doing research, tough research in that field, case studies and best practices and all the things that probably people out there won't have. The other one which and I think that one can position you to getting funding that would be not from too many people, but a funding you can get that can run for years, especially through this Sustainable Haki Institute you're starting. Then the other one I thought was to be a place, even provide, to become like a resource center, you know, a library, yeah, where you do this serious document, and I think it should be part of your strategic objectives to be a documentation par excellence for legal work in Kenya, and also to disseminate, to pass out this information, because if you do this good work, if I didn't come here today, I would not have known about nucleus. I had to come here physically to see karaoke, to hear Claire, to hear other people. How can you make this work be done so that you are not all going to the same donor to look for money to do the same work without knowing that other people are doing it? But maybe, and also the networking aspect of it. I didn't hear it a lot in here. I heard about people you're working with, but networking for value addition. For now, let me just say that.
So, add my voice to saying that I think you guys are doing a really, really great job, and congratulations on all the work that you're doing. I think it's wonderful to associate with the LRF. I would like to also applaud the work of the vetting scorecard. I think the history of this vetting scorecard was in our boardroom. We just sat in our boardroom one day, and we asked ourselves, with all this vetting that is going on with the judges, why can't we also vet our MPs? And among the partners that we were discussing with, LRF took the challenge and they said, we will develop. So congratulations on that, and we are very proud of you. And everywhere where we talk about the vetting scorecard, it's receiving a lot of interest. And with the partners in Diaconia, I mean, we've made it like, it's almost like being forced, eh? You know those conditions. It's become like, you know, if you're doing voter education, if you're doing civic education, then, you know, do the vetting scorecard, which is very useful, and we are very, very proud of that. I think I'll still echo the issue of documentation, and again, to my popular question, so what that you have 889 paralegals? I mean, beyond those numbers, again, just if we had not listened to Claire, 889 just remains a number. So therefore, the issue is to begin to, yes, 889, but what stories are we telling that are coming out of these 889? And I think that is where the power is. If you had not listened to Claire, then you just see a paralegal and you're like, okay, yeah, it's a paralegal, so they've done it. So I think LRF needs to get into the work of telling the story, not just in the round table sessions, but I don't know whether you will have to get some communication expert somewhere to help you, put together all these things, because they are great things, they are beautiful things that can also sell you, and then can also tell how you're doing the work. David, with the finances, I know there is a lot of plea for people to add money. But I mean, I can tell you, the global trends is that really money is going down. And I can tell you, it's going to go even more down. I mean, we do not see increases in funding, especially from probably where we sit, significantly, because donors are also shifting their mindset. They are thinking of going to private sector support, so it's not going to be easy. And therefore, I think, even as we were discussing in the marketplace about the Haki Institute, how you will position yourself to continue to grow. I'm glad that you can already begin to see the fact that, if you look at the Haki Institute and from what David was presenting, the fact that you can see an increase in terms of the growing support into the organization from the Haki Institute, I think the future is promising for the Institute. Therefore, you need to continue being encouraged. But again, as I was sharing with Jedida, the thinking of how do you register these Haki Institutes so that you still are able to get support for it, and you're still able to, take advantage of being able to continue pumping into the LRF work. I think those are things that you may need to probably reflect on. As I said, and as I say to Jedida, I'm very much willing, as Diaconia, to support the strategic plan for the Haki Foundation so that you can see where your growth is ended. Thank you very much.
Yeah, okay, you may continue. You may continue.
Yeah, my name's Noam Webanda from GSU. I'll take you on the penal reforms. And when we are looking at penal reforms, in fact, we have to consider the entire criminal justice system, and that is the police. The police where reports or complaints are made, and then, of course, the due process of law starts from there, and then it moves on to the courts, where at the courts, these offenders are tried to prove their innocence or otherwise. And if they are committed, then they are sent to corrections institutions. Those are prisons, postal homes, for treatment, punishment, or rehabilitation. Then, after having served their term at the prisons, they are released either by way of, after having completed their service, by way of probation, by way of parole, or through presidential pardon. Now they come back to society. So my question is, how is LRF handling the issue of victimization within the society? Because when we're talking about victimization, it has to do with the victims and offenders. Victims are not well prepared to receive their offenders back to society. There is no or lack of acceptance back to this society. In essence, they think that the prisons have done very little to correct these offenders. In effect, therefore, there are high chances of recidivism, or if you like, reoffending, which comes, about by way of maybe mob injustice, just because the society now feels that they've been let down by the prisons, and therefore they have no confidence in the criminal justice system. Now, how do you handle this victimization at societal level? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, thank you, Wanjiko and Jerry, for asking the question. Our work around people's participation in the community and the use of the scorecard. We have emphasized a lot on the monitoring and evaluation in respect to conducting activities that are results-based. And one of the intention of the scorecard is to ensure that communities come to a social contract with the leader. And we've suggested that they can get into the development of manifestos or service charters, upon which we have a tool we call the accountability checklist, which we conduct data collection in the course of the project to determine whether these manifestos, the provisions, the agreements reached with the leader are actually being fulfilled. So we've started using it, especially in this electioneering period, to determine what kind of leaders that the communities will have. And we've already received a lot of requests from counties such as Nyeri, where aspiring leaders want to use the scorecard to have the communities vet themselves. So that's a way in which we will be monitoring whether the scorecard needs improvement, it's working, and whether the leaders that the communities choose or elect are worthy of Chapter 6 of the Constitution. Another way which Lucy Diaconia mentioned is through the partners. I can tell you, since we are funded by Diaconia, that there is a lot of emphasis on results-based. And I believe that through the results that we will receive from LRF and the other partners, 12 partners, it will also be another indirect way of measuring and monitoring the use of the scorecard, together with the information that you are getting. Then lastly, Janet mentioned the journal. And for us, we use it during our monitoring visits in the community, where we want to see what kind of, what are the communities, what is the voice of the community, what are they saying? And therefore, it will be another forum for us to monitor on the leadership and integrity scorecard. Are they satisfied? Are they utilizing the part 1 on the community vetting? Are they satisfied with the criteria? And do they think that it needs to be improved at the next level? So those are some of the examples that as LRF will be using to monitor the integrity and the use of the scorecard. Thank you.
Thank you, Wanjiko. In respect to issues to do with Mauritius, these have been a major challenge, not just to LRF, but as it is to the nation. But of late, we have had a deliberate effort to look into issues of extremism, not just from the local level, but at the international level, knowing our engagement with KDF and Somalia. Because we have realized that recruitment is not just happening out there when you're talking about mosques, for example, when you're talking about Al-Shabaab, but it's also actually happening within our own perimeters in the prisons, whereby you find that we already have suspects that we are holding who have Al-Shabaab origin or suspect of these particular militias. We also have Mongiki, people who you get and they get them in prisons. You remember the whole saga we had in Murang'a, Kirinyaga, and the rest. You remember we have Sungu in Kuria, Migori, Rongo, and Kisii prisons. We have the Taliban boys in Kisumu, and name them. And for us is how to focus on the youth who are mostly vulnerable to these particular processes. And one of the things is we are working closely with partners who are like-minded in terms of empowering the youth out of crime, to ensure that we focus on them deliberately to have an alternative from crime. Secondly is through taking them, of course, through a lot of capacity awareness in terms of the implications of joining such particular movements. And the sorry status of this is that it's not just the youth in the system that are getting in this particular organized crime, but some of us even who are working within these particular systems are actually getting inducted into it. And this is a real challenge that we have in the society, that we must have a triangulative effort to ensure that we are able to get out of it. It's going to take some time, but I think we have started looking at it and not giving it a blind eye as it has been before. Then looking at the issue of victim rights, This is a topical area that became of interest to Kenya recently. Currently, we're actually working with the probation department to come up with a victims law and other partner to ensure that we have victim protection in this particular country, to ensure that the victims of crimes are protected. Secondly, around the victims, we are looking at having outreach programs, and this I'm responding to in respect to the whole aspect of recidivism or fallback to crime. And we started a pilot in Embu prison, working with the provincial administration, the officer in charge in Embu, and the various partners there. And what we came up was what we are calling reintegration committees, whereby the provincial administration takes lead together with the prisons to prepare the local community that a prisoner X by the name Lenson is supposed to be coming back to the society in a month's time. And they're using the chiefs, barazas, the churches, and the rest to prepare the community that, yes, Lenson was in prison. Yes, Lenson may have killed. Yes, Lenson may have taken the cow, but he's a changed person. And of course, probably when he learned a skill, the reintegration committee makes aware the community that actually Lenson is having a skill. He is now a mason, or he has got training in horticultural production and the rest. So the community ceases to see Lenson as an ex-convict, but as a person who is resourceful. Closely to that, we're also working with a partner by the name RODI. RODI is a short form of Resources-Oriented Development Initiative, who have a project which is about also reintegration, and is about their concept is about appeasing the society. Remember, the society here was aggrieved by Lenson. So what they are going to do is, if, for example, Lenson comes from Nyeri where the milk is there, they will teach Lenson a skill on adding value to milk. About, say, for example, milk can make yogurt, cheese, and the rest. So when Lenson is coming out of the prison, he comes out as a teacher. In Machakos, what they're doing, they're teaching ex-convict in issues to do with making interlocking bricks out of soil. So when Lenson comes out, he comes out not as an ex-convict, but a person who can actually teach the society or his neighbors how to make bricks for better housing. You realize now the whole issue of victimization of this particular ex-offender is no longer there. That makes the offender feel appreciated in the community, and he doesn't fall back to crime. Thank you.
Thank you, Lenson. I will ask Jadida to respond to
Jerry and Lucy. The issue of documentation has been an issue with us for quite a while. Indeed, when we developed the current strategic plan in 2008, that is one of the things that came up, that we have an avalanche of information. We have a lot of information institutionally. We have a lot of information in our minds. We have a lot of information that is exiting with the staff or even board members who leave. And therefore, it was noted that there was a need to document the same. We have started that long process. One, we now have a deliberate monitoring system and have a monitoring manual to begin tracking our results. We have begun doing quarter reports to begin that. But the next stage is really documenting it to the level where we can share it and analyze it and use it for sharing in terms of best practices and the like. That is an issue that is still of challenge to us and also of concern to us. And we do hope before we complete this strategy, that will be something of the past that we can be able even to celebrate next year with, when we'll be celebrating our 20 years. One of the things that we have done, we've not entirely lost most of the information. A lot of the research work that you see, including like the sentencing policy that you've received, you'll find that a lot of the raw material is based from the work that we do. But we do acknowledge there is need for us to go to the next level. In respect to the Haki, yes. Really, as David said during the finance presentation, Haki is our future, and we are sure we'll be able to develop it with your support in making it a sustainability wing, not only in terms of financial sustainability, but also in many of the things that we even advocate for. programmatically. And therefore, we still rely on you in terms of wisdom and learning. And I believe it is true we can learn more even from Kariuki, who has practically taken some of those lessons home in Bungoma. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you once again. My name is Amunywa from Probation Department. And my comments will be like areas of opportunities for LRF and probably some suggestions. I would like to say from the onset that we've been having a very good working relationship with the organization, I think for the last 10 or so years, more than 10 years, in the area of access to justice, administration of justice program. And I want to probably say, like someone said there, that maybe probably LRF needs to reposition itself and expand its threshold in terms of what they want to do so that they can cover all aspects of emerging issues in society, like expand your vision from just, I think there was a time your vision was access to justice to all, but I can see now it's been like changed to just an equitable society. That means that you are evolving or transforming according to the needs of society. So I can see the areas of Aki Institute is coming up. So the Aki Institute should not just be for paralegalism training. I think you need to expand that to cover all aspects of advocacy and paralegalism and all other human rights training and all that. Then the area of access to justice in the administration of justice program. I really appreciate the work that is being done by Legal Resources Foundation in the area of alternative dispute resolution. That is the traditional dispute resolution mechanisms. And I would like to say, and I also talked to Jedida and Lenson about it, we had no idea that the organization is working on this area. And until the other day that I called them, our PS is very passionate about this. He even set up a committee that I was chairing to come up with how can we come up with structures which are based in the community and which are also acceptable by our courts so that we can entrench the 95% of people who do not come to court. Because we understand there are so many organizations and mechanisms that are working out there. But the idea is that now they have been like disbanded, or if they have to do those traditional dispute resolutions, they have to go through the provincial administration. But what we need is, I don't know whether it is rules or regulations or structures or policy or legal framework to support that. Because I think what we are getting from the CJI is a good indication that they are supporting it. Again, in terms of affirmative action, I think I would like to say as a ministry also we have been working on the area of special needs offenders. And I think from what Lenson was demonstrating there during the marketplace is that you are really covering a lot of them. And as government, you also realize that we have very good ideas, but once we come up with even the frameworks, but like they die out. So as the organization that has got the advantage of advocacy, probably would like you to take over from all the recommendations that were even made during that particular conference. We had a Special Needs Offenders International Conference last year, and I think Legal Resources Foundation was ably represented by the Executive Director. And then, of course, affirmative action. I think you need to come up with that for children with conflict with the law, as well as the youth in conflict with the law. And this is actually entrenched in the Constitution. Because why we are saying this, we know there are so many community NGOs that are working in this area, but we are seeing a lot of, especially outcomes and outputs in terms of what they are doing, in terms of helping those children who are in conflict with the law. And I can attest to the fact that we are not seeing a lot. So it will not really matter so much even if you replicate what others are doing. In the area of advocacy, I think LRF has also been doing a lot of that, especially in the governance area, devolved funds. And I think I saw something about LATIF, but I've not seen anything about the CDF. It's a bit sensitive because I was talking to a board member of CDF and he said the only disadvantage they have is that it's entrenched in Parliament. It's a committee of Parliament. So some of the information that they might want to release to the press or the public is a bit sieved or guarded. Because once you release the results of performing CDFs, then it will be like you are sending about 80% of the MPs home. So they are guarding that information so much that it does not come out. So I was asking, how can you go to court, even invoke Article 35, access to information, and say the public has a right to know? We're in an election year in mood now. We are going to an election year next year probably, or this year. So the public needs to know who have been performing and who have been making noise about all this. The other area probably I might take some little time because I think I know so much about what LRF can do. And there's this, in terms of opportunities, I'm asking them to also to play a bigger role in the administration of justice, like National Council for Administration of Justice and the court users committees. And of course, in the area of decogestion of prisons, the parole system, how can we operationalize some of these things? Because as we know, the act that set up the NCAJ is supposed to, I think they're supposed to be meeting quarterly, but I think if I'm not wrong, the last time they met was in August last year when they were launching it. I stand to be corrected, but I think they have not probably been meeting as often that they should be meeting. So what we are trying to say is how can we probably prompt this particular committee, maybe I stand to be corrected, to be at least be meeting to resolve issues that are coming out from the ground, especially through the court users committees, because it is that particular organ at the national level that can actually look at all those things that are coming from the court users committee. And that way now we'll be seeing that justice is flowing from top or from bottom top situation, so that the recommendations are taken seriously and acted upon. And one of your themes today, or objectives today, is to create sustainable partnerships, if I'm not wrong. But I also stand to be corrected because we have been in a relationship or working partnership with LRF, but up to date we don't have an MOU. I also don't know whether you have an MOU with Prisons Department or even the judiciary. So I think for you to create or to focus more on people and institutions, I think it's important also to develop kind of a generic MOU, so that organizations that wants to partner with you can also probably borrow. At least we are trying to talk about sustainability here. Maybe to add a bit on the area of access, legal aid. I think so many organizations have been focusing on offenders and not the offended. And that's why my friend here talked about victims of offenses. And that's why also Lenson talked about us developing a bill on victims of offenses, which I think is at the stage of either stakeholder consultation. I have no idea, but we forward it to the relevant authorities. But what we are trying to see is that so many NGOs, I don't know whether it's for purposes of funding, they really work so much on offenders and forget that the offended also need to be given some legal aid, you know. And that's why reintegration also becomes, and reintegration and acceptance becomes a big challenge. If the offenders, the victims, that is the primary and the secondary victims, are not involved in the whole process. So thank you so much, and I think that's what I had to.
Thank you very much, but I would like to urge you to train more prison officers on paralegalism so that they may be able to supplement the civilian paralegals. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Munywa, for understanding us so well and appreciating our potential. And we'll take in a number of the suggestions that you have. I think one challenge we have as LRF is, like on the whole area of special needs, is appreciating that the other people doing it probably is how to develop some collaborative methodology with those people who are already doing it, particularly on areas that they are not really focusing on. I just want to comment on the traditional dispute resolution mechanism systems. We have draft rules, and we are working on them vigorously. In fact, this week there will be a meeting with the Council of Elders, the Luo Council of Elders, and the same will be shared with them, because it is true that a lot of the disputes are out of court, and people are managing their disputes out there. Some are happy and some are not, but there's need for us to institutionalize that, especially now with it being recognized in the Constitution. We were very instrumental in that amendment in the Constitution because we found the value. You heard when Janet was speaking, a lot of the disputes are really settled there. Listening to her, you'd actually think she's both the High Court, Court of Appeal, and almost Supreme Court, all rolled up in one at the village level. And therefore there is need for us to recognize them and also regulate them, but not control them. I'm very inspired by the issue of CDF. Yes, we focused on LATIF, who pocketed my money. The research here is there, but we've not focused on CDF. Our thinking was that LATIF was even more strange to people than CDF. But the whole issue you've brought in is actually a vetting issue in terms of public information and how can we use public interest litigation to have this CDF information out and people can be able to use it objectively for the vetting process. I think that's an idea we can work with and see how the court deals with that. In terms of the MOU, yes, we've really relied a lot on a lot of goodwill with various institutions. For the longest time possible, most of the state institutions have been very shy to go the memorandum way, other than probation has really been pushing us on that element, and it's something that we need to tie up. But it's increasingly becoming almost possible to have MOUs. If you ask prison where our MOU is since 2003, they will look and look and look, and we will also look. But there is an MOU somewhere. I'm not sure whether it is in the commissioner's statement when he said the prisons are over. I'm not sure whether it is in the prisons file. I'm not sure, but we have a working MOU, but nothing that we can really show on paper. And I think this is the next frontier of us. I think this is what Wanjiku was saying we need to grow up into and become that kind of a resource institution.